The Goonch Catfish. Picture standing waist deep in a slow brown river, the kind that looks calm enough to swim in. You can't see your own feet, and something down there can see you just fine. Between 1998 and 2007, people along the Kali River on the border of India and Nepal kept vanishing from the same handful of bathing spots, and the suspect wasn't a crocodile, it was a fish. The goonch is a giant catfish, up to around 6 feet long and over 160 pounds, with a flattened body built to press against the riverbed and a mouth of backward-hooked teeth made for gripping, not slicing. For a fish with no personal interest in you, it gets remarkably close. A healthy goonch already outweighs the person floating above it. The record rod-caught fish hit around 165 pounds, roughly a fully loaded washing machine, if your washing machine were alive, hunting, and built like someone stretched a pig and told it to lie flat. It didn't need to be a monster. It just needed to be bigger than anyone expected, in water where you can't see a thing. The surface told those villagers nothing. It never does. The electric eel. You don't have to be bitten, crushed, or swallowed by this one. You just have to be in the water when it decides to fire. Up to 8 feet long, it carries 3 electric organs that run down most of its body and stun prey with a single high-voltage volley. Here's where it gets absurd. A wall outlet runs about 120 volts. A stun gun rides up in the hundreds. One of these eels was measured at 860 volts, the strongest jolt ever recorded from any living thing on Earth. The charge comes from thousands of cells stacked like batteries in a line, and the ones in clear highland water push the voltage even higher, because that water resists electricity, and they have to shout to be heard. It's not actually an eel. Despite the name, it's a knife fish, closer to catfish and carp than to any true eel, which scientists only fully sorted out in 2019, when they realized there were 3 separate species hiding in plain sight. So it's basically a wet extension cord that hunts, one that also has to surface for air like a swimmer who happens to be a live wire. 860 volts, and it still has to come up and breathe. The Alligator Gar. Pull one of these out of a southern US river and your gut reaction is that it shouldn't still exist. It's barely changed in 100 million years. It looks purpose-built to kill you, with a double row of needle teeth and a body sheathed in diamond-shaped scales, so tough that native peoples once used them as arrowheads. And yet, the actual human body count surprises everybody. This fish is older than the Rocky Mountains. It was already swimming while the last dinosaurs were alive, which makes it a prehistoric river tank that somehow forgot to go extinct. Those scales are tough enough that engineers now study them for modern body armor, armored like a knight, and it uses all of it to be a mostly polite bottom feeder. Because despite the horror movie face, the man-eater reputation is completely unearned. Turns out there's no confirmed record of an alligator gar ever killing a person. The scariest thing about it is honestly the eye contact. Terrifying to look at, statistically safer than the drive to the lake. If you're enjoying meeting the creatures that actually live under all that calm water, I post new animal deep dives like this regularly, and subscribing really helps. Thanks. The Wels Catfish. You expect a fish to stay in the water. This one figured out that lunch doesn't. On the Tarn River in southern France, scientists filmed something no textbook said a catfish could do, on land. The Wels is a European giant, reaching around 9 feet and hundreds of pounds. Individual catfish lunge their entire bodies up onto gravel banks to grab pigeons drinking at the water's edge, then thrash backward into the deep before the bird knows what happened. Researchers counted 54 of these attacks and clocked a 28% success rate. Picture it, 9 feet of fish, longer than 2 grown adults laid end to end. Heavier than the person on the bank trying to reel it in, deliberately stranding itself on a beach for a snack. And it's not instinct baked into the species, it's a learned trick, passed around a small clique of local fish that return to the exact same spots day after day. Basically a river gang with one very specific hustle. So this thing commutes onto land for takeout, then clocks back in underwater. Somewhere in France, a pigeon population has quietly learned that the shoreline is not the safe part. The Arapaima. In Piranha country, being big isn't enough. You also have to be armored, and this fish is both. The Arapaima is one of the largest freshwater fish alive, stretching up to about 15 feet and 440 pounds, cruising the flooded forests of the Amazon. You can bring a knife to a piranha fight, or you can just grow better scales. Each scale is a hard shell over springy collagen, so a piranha bite cracks the surface but can't punch through. The same principal materials scientists now copy for armor. 15 feet is about as long as a small car. Stack 3 grown men on top of each other, and you're still short of its weight, nearly a quarter ton of fish. And the surface tells you nothing, unless you're the monster forced to break it every few minutes just to stay alive, because the Arapaima breathes air through a lung-like swim bladder and has to keep coming up to gulp it. It survives the piranhas just fine. Its problem is that it can't stop surfacing to breathe, which is a terrible habit in a river full of people holding nets. The giant freshwater stingray. Picture a flat little stingray from a warm sea, grown to the size of a dining table and dropped into a muddy river you can't see into. In 2022, a fisher on the Mekong in Cambodia hooked one that rewrote the record books. It measured almost 13 feet across and weighed 661 pounds, the largest freshwater fish ever documented anywhere on Earth. For scale, that's heavier than a full-grown lion, and it edged out the previous river record holder to take the crown. It solved the problem of staying hidden at the size of a mattress by simply lying flat and letting the silt settle over it. Its one weapon is a barbed tail spine, up to about 15 inches long and coated in venom. But that spine is pure defense, so the real danger is stepping on one. That record ray was tagged and released alive by researchers studying the species, which is endangered. Weighing it meant rigging a special sling and a boat, because you don't casually put the biggest fish in any river on a bathroom scale. The largest freshwater fish on the planet spends its entire life pretending to be the floor. The ocean gets all the headlines, but some of the biggest slabs of muscle on Earth are sitting in the brown water people wade through on vacation. The Candiru. This is the one you've heard the story about. The tiny Amazon fish with the horrifying reputation, barely the size of a toothpick, and it has ruined a lot of people's swimming plans. The legend says it swims inside you. The truth is actually stranger, and it's not the part everybody repeats. The Candiru is a real parasite. It's transparent, needle thin, an inch or two long, and it makes its living by slipping under the gill covers of bigger fish and drinking their blood. It's smaller than your little finger, lighter than a paperclip, and somehow the most feared animal on this entire list. The common version of this story, the one where it swims up a stream of urine into a human body, is basically wrong. Studies show the fish isn't drawn to urine at all. The fluid physics don't allow it to swim up a stream, and the single famous case that gets cited has been picked apart by the researchers who reviewed it. 2 centuries of pure terror, built on one very shaky report. So the scariest fish in the Amazon turns out to be a swimming splinter with a blood habit. It earned a nightmare reputation, the size of a shark on a body the size of a match. The Green Anaconda. Most predators announce themselves somehow. This one waits with nothing but its eyes above the water, sitting on the exact surface you've been trusting this whole time. The Green Anaconda is the heaviest snake alive, tipping over 500 pounds and stretching up to nearly 30 feet, with eyes and nostrils on top of its head, so it floats almost submerged while still watching the bank. From above, it's a floating log that blinks. It doesn't chase and it doesn't bite to kill. It gets one grip, wraps, and lets physics finish the job. Every time the trapped animal breathes out, the coils tighten into the space it gave up and never let it back, cutting off blood flow in under a minute. For length, imagine 2 cars parked nose to tail. For weight, it outweighs every other snake on Earth by a wide margin, 500 plus pounds of muscle that somehow floats. By now, the pattern is obvious, and it isn't comforting. The surface doesn't just hide the monster. Sometimes the surface is the monster. You could be staring right at it, see a harmless piece of driftwood, and stay calm right up until the driftwood had you. The piranha. Everybody already fears this fish, which is exactly why the real story is worth telling. The image of a swarm stripping an animal to bone in seconds came from somewhere very specific, and it wasn't the Amazon. Red-bellied piranhas do have interlocking razor teeth that shear flesh clean, and they travel in big shoals, but most people think they're coordinated pack hunters that attack anything that moves, and that reputation traces back to a stunt staged for a visiting American president over a century ago, using starving fish crammed into a blocked-off stretch of river. The terrifying frenzy was essentially a setup, and the fish were the unpaid actors. In reality, the shoaling is mostly about safety in numbers, and true frenzies only happen when fish get trapped in shrinking dry season pools and start to starve. A single bite can slice through flesh. A real shoal can number in the hundreds, but the count of people actually eaten alive in a normal year is basically zero. Picture a river full of grumpy, overhyped goldfish that happen to come with a bite. The most feared fish in the world mostly just wants to be left alone, which is more than you can say for half the animals on this list. The monster you were taught to fear is almost never the one that actually gets you. The snakehead. Every other monster on this list has the decency to stay in its river. This one doesn't. It climbs out, crosses dry ground, and turns up somewhere it was never supposed to be, possibly a pond near you. Wildlife officials in New York keep telling people to kill this fish on sight, and there's a blunt reason for that. The northern snakehead reaches around 3 feet long, and tucked beside its gills is an air chamber that lets it breathe straight from the atmosphere. Most fish suffocate within minutes out of water. This one can last for days in damp conditions, and it uses that time to wriggle over land to reach a brand new body of water. It's an aggressive predator, with no local predators to keep it in check. So when it turns up somewhere new, the native fish have no answer. Nature handed it a lung, and it immediately used that gift to trespass. It treats your neighborhood pond like one stop on a series of connecting flights. You can't drain a lake to feel safe from a fish that will simply get up and walk to the next one. The bull shark. You made it through every river giant on this list, telling yourself that the sharks, at least, stay out in the ocean where they belong. They don't. There's a documented bull shark that turned up all the way into Illinois, caught in a trap near a town called Alton. It swam there on its own. The bull shark's whole trick is chemistry. Most sharks would swell up and die within hours in fresh water, but the bull shark's kidneys, and a special gland near its tail, recycle salt and dump the excess, so a river is just another hunting ground. Sharks are supposed to mean the ocean. This one has reached Alton, roughly 700 miles inland, and up the Amazon, it's been tracked around 2,500 miles inland toward Peru. The belief that sharks simply can't survive in fresh water is flat wrong. Turns out, one of the most dangerous sharks on Earth treats rivers, lakes, and estuaries as open territory. And it isn't lost. It knows exactly where it is. For decades, people insisted these inland sightings had to be mistakes. They weren't. You've spent this whole video learning to read the surface. Here's the last thing it hides. The calmest, most familiar water, the slow river you swam in as a kid, tells you nothing either. And sometimes, there's a shark under it. If you want more animals that rewrite what you thought you knew about the water, I post new deep dives like this every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.